this is Dr. PJ. Thanks for watching my channel. I wanted to talk about testing. There's a couple of different types of tests available and some newer tests that are rapid. And I think most people don't know the difference between the testing and what it tells us and how to take it in context of what's going on with that individual patient. So let's start by saying there are two types of testing. One is diagnostic testing. The second is antibody testing. And diagnostic testing tells us if you have C19, active and current. And that's the goal. Antibody testing tells us if you had C19 in the past and produced antibodies to that. It doesn't necessarily tell you if your infection is active. So all of these tests have different collection methods, different processing methods, and different turnaround times. Since there are different types of tests and all of them have a lot of things about them that are unique, I'd like to just talk about one at a time. Today we're going to talk about the PCR or molecular test. That's the most common one that's been around for a while since C19 started. And that's the one where you take a swab that kind of looks like a Q-tip, you put it in your nose, they twirl it around to try to get a sample out of the back of your nose or the back of your throat and get mucus that contains some type of viral particle on it. That PCR test stands for polymerase chain reaction. And this is a chemical process where if that sample is taken from your nose, sent to the lab tech will process it, use chemicals and reagents, and use PCR technology to multiply what small amount of virus is on that swab until it reaches a threshold for detection, and then your test comes back positive. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to know about this, and I just made some notes. Number one, how do you interpret these tests? First of all, you have to make sure that you have a test that's FDA approved, because these FDA approved tests are very accurate. We think it's the most accurate that's available out there. There are some limitations. As we talked about, there are the need for specialized swabs, the chemical reagents to process the samples, and also the logistics involved in doing all that has resulted in not enough tests and delays in testing because we don't have enough materials. Another limitation is when they get the sample, they actually have to get a good sample. So if somebody puts a swab in your nose, you have to kind of really just sit there and take it and let them swab around, because the better sample that they get, the more likely your test will be accurate. There's a couple of other things. You can have a false negative with a PCR test. And the reason why is because you may not have a good sample, you may not have an FDA approved test that is accurate, and we know that in England they had a huge shipment of tests from China that up to 30% were inaccurate. The tests in the US, the ones that are FDA approved, we feel are much more accurate, in the high 90% range. There's an issue of what you're actually testing. The PCR analysis takes the RNA from the virus and replicates it to the testing threshold. But if you take the clinical course of the virus is active and alive and reproducing, we think, for somewhere in the order of 10 days to 14 days or so. And after that, we feel like the virus becomes dead and inactive, but you still have those same viral particles that the PCR is testing, so the test can pick up dead virus. So that's really important to know, because depending on when your symptoms started, then the PCR test can still remain positive after the virus is not active, but still shed in your mucous membranes as dead virus. So that's a little bit about the PCR testing, and I will give you a link to the FDA website that elaborates a little bit more on this. And in my other videos, I'll be talking about the antigen test and the antibody test. Thanks, and everyone out there, stay safe.